Okay, welcome to this week's episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Daichi Miller here from Warrior Concepts here in East Central Pennsylvania. So if you're in the area, hey, stop by, say hi, that kind of thing. My voice might sound a little bit different at the moment. We're entering allergy season and whatnot, so got a little bit more bass or baritone going on. Anyway, all right, so let's jump into today's lesson, right? So this should challenge assumptions pretty much right out of the gate. Okay. But if you've been around for a while, you know me, that's, I'd say that's how I roll, but that would be a ninja joke. Anyway, so most martial artists are taught pretty much the same way, right? An attack comes in and you learn a response. Okay. Makes sense, right? There's certain places in the training that makes perfect sense, right? But what it really comes down to is like a punch comes in, we block, right? A grab comes in, we escape. I don't know, a kick comes in, we counter somehow, right? And over time, you collect more and more of these responses, right? Different techniques, different angles, different scenarios, right? And eventually something interesting happens. You start to realize that something isn't quite working the way it should, especially if you're doing randori, if you're doing sparring and whatnot, and you're trying to remember what to do. Now, if the attack is always the same, right? There's this standardized attack that everybody does. That doesn't change things too much, right? Now, speed and whatnot, right? But things can change, okay? Because the more attacks you try to prepare for, right, the more complicated everything becomes, right? We have more variables, right? There's more reactions, more angles, more, whatever, right? More decisions under pressure, okay? And when pressure rises, that in and of itself, that complexity becomes a problem in and of itself, okay? Because the human brain, our brains, don't perform well when they're forced to make too many decisions too quickly. Okay, I know, right? Believe it or not, right? So that's why even highly trained fighters, right, sometimes freeze, right? Not because they lack skill, right, but because they're trying to solve too many problems at once, okay? And even if they don't freeze, right, what do we see over time, right, for most folks? And if you've been around for a while, maybe this happened to you as well, right? What ends up happening is they've learned this entire system. And then over time, everything shrinks, right? Until they've got 1 to 3, maybe punches that they rely on most of the time. Same thing with kicks, same thing with grabs, same thing with locks and restraints on the floor, those kind of things, right? Because the brain has simplified things so there's less to think about, okay? But it also leaves holes because those other responses and whatnot were there for contingency plans, okay? So anyway, again, they don't do these things because they lack skill, but because they're trying to solve too many problems at once, right? Now, here's the interesting thing. If you study classical martial arts carefully, right, you start to notice something, right? Many kata descriptions never specify the exact attack. And again, I mentioned this earlier, mid 80s, give or take, these kata lists started getting passed around in the Budokan, because before that, we were taught there were no kata because they didn't want us focusing on those. Most of us came from other martial systems. They wanted us focusing on the principles and concepts that things were built from, okay? And so that worked really, really well. Next thing you know, these kata lists, which were actually based on videos that were coming out or teachers, demonstrating certain things, and then these things got skeletized, right? And to be clear, right, I bought into these things as well because, well, here's an expedient, right? But then I started getting a hold of and studying the actual written Japanese description from the scrolls right? Or teachers just flat out reading off these things, right? It doesn't say uketsuki. It says the enemy comes at your face. Okay, there's that, and that sentence itself is loaded, right? Men, right? It comes at your men, right? Where is that? Because men face, right? It's the part that the world can see when you're looking at them, right? Any of that, right, could be it. But that's it, right? An enemy, well, enemy's not opponent, enemy's not uke, enemy's somebody that wants to beat, break, or kill you. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff in there, but then it immediately goes into the next description, like koku, right? Goes into the next description, which is upon uke, right? Not taking uke nagash, uke uch, nothing like that. Upon receiving, upon contact, quickly and suddenly do this next thing, right? Wait, whoa. Back up, right? The enemy comes at you, but it doesn't say angle. It doesn't specify technique. It doesn't specify explanation. It doesn't say what his fight style is, right? At first glance, it seems like there's something missing, right? It seems like things are incomplete, right? But what if that was intentional, right? What if the lesson that the past masters were passing down wasn't about the attack, but something else, right? What if it wasn't about responding to specific attacks because they knew that if they wrote down something specific, ego would do what it always does and grab a hold of that, and then that would become the thing instead of a thing. But either way, what if that wasn't the important piece? Okay. And in classical martial arts, lessons are often left incomplete. So the student can figure it out because answers that we come by up from our own work, from our own research and trial and error and all that kind of stuff, right? We take way more seriously and they sink in much more deeply than if somebody just hands us the answer. Okay. Ego loves that stuff, but the counterintuitive thing is that's not how we learn the best. Right? But again, what if the lesson isn't about ducking a certain type of punch or avoiding a certain type of kick or off a certain angle or whatever? What if it wasn't about responding to a specific attack, right? What if the lesson is about standing, positioning, right, in such a way that the attack itself doesn't matter? What if he could throw anything he wants, right? And you have the same problem at its endpoint as if he threw anything else. Okay. This is important, right? Because no matter how the opponent attacks, right? If I'm in that sweet spot, if I have that correct Mae distance, if I've chosen the correct Kamae, right, to open certain windows, close off other ones, to narrow his options, if I've done that, right, he has to pass through the same gate. And I'm using that word specifically today, right? Gate. Because if we think about a castle, right, all the walls are fortified, right? It's really, really difficult to get in. But at strategic positions or places, right, they put what? They put gates, right? But there's only a couple of them. Why? Easier to manage. Okay. It's easier to manage traffic flow. It's easier to seal things off quickly if a siege is coming, that kind of thing, right? It's about funneling things to maintain control. Okay. So that's where we're going today, right? Once he enters that gate, the outcome becomes much easier to manage, just like the castle analogy, right? So that's what we're gonna be exploring today, right? Not Kamae as stances, right? Not Kamae as dachi, right? Which is a stance, okay? Pose, whatever, okay? But Kamae as posture, how you're placing your parts to create openings and close off other ones, right? Positioning, right? Relative to him, right? Even attitude, right? Attitude's a big part of it. That's internal Kamae, right? But not as not Kamae as stances, right? But Kamae as gates. Okay. This is an advanced level kind of thing. All right. I'm not saying that everybody can't learn it. The sooner you learn it, the sooner you take your Kamae more seriously and you try to learn them for what they are. And we don't make the mistake that lots make. I did, right? Where, well, Kamae is just another word for stance. Or, oh, Kamae, that's the Japanese word for stance. Because we came from other martial arts or other systems, or we watch things, or we know this word or whatever. Now, as we define things, that's going to determine our trajectory, our path, right? So we have to be careful, okay? So here's where we're going, right? We're looking at Kamae as gates, and we're controlling the gates, right? When we control the gate, you control the outcome, okay? All right, before I forget, don't forget, help me out, right? Like, share, subscribe, even drop a comment. Don't, I mean, you have to do it now, but you can drop it later. Biggest takeaway for the lesson, biggest aha moment, follow-up question, something like that. As long as it's respectful, I try to get to these things. So anyway, all right. So let's start with that. Let's start with this misconception, right? That most martial artists are taught that Kamae are stances. They're either taught it word for word, or there's this implication, or the word is just used, but it's not defined. It's not explained. Kamae, like in most martial arts, with the way they deal with stances, right? I've been in the Encyclopedia of Martial Arts. Okay, what ends up happening is people can see them as these necessary evils that we have to learn so we can get to the cool shit. Except that after I started studying this martial art in 1980, so do the math, right? I've long since come to realize that these are the cool shit. Okay, they're tactical operating postures that allow us, regardless of techniques, right? One, to execute the technique easier, but to get to the completion, successful completion of the strategic outcome that we're looking for much faster and much easier. Okay, funnels everything, right? So we'll talk about that as we go, right? So again, this misconception, okay? People are taught that these things are stances, they're poses, they're shapes that you stand in before something happens, right? But that's not what Kamae are, right? Can we see them that way? Sure. Makes a neat little expedient for the brand new person, right? But if we're going to tactically use these things on the straight and not just see them as a foregone conclusion or throw them away and do things our way, right? Isuke Sensei's dojo, they laugh a lot at people that they don't have the basics right. They don't have these things correctly, right? So what they'll do is they'll laugh and they'll go, this is your style. And then they'll do the thing, which might look like, if it was in a picture book, it might look correct. And then they'll go, no, this, right? And you can see the gears turning. You can see the strategic objective, right? There's something going on that you're trying to communicate across that void, right? There's a projection of intent. There's a state of being. And yes, there's a physical posturing, but it's not just that. Okay. So, Kamae are not these things, right? Kamae are tactical funnels. Okay. And something else down here, right? They're tactical funnels. But Sensei, in a different Whiteboard Wednesday, you called them something else. I did. That was for a different level of training. Okay. There's a reason this is advanced Kamae strategy. Okay. So if we're still thinking about where our foot goes, if we're still thinking we have to remember how the Kamae is made, that kind of stuff, we're still stuck on it being a stance. Yeah, we're not ready for this. Okay. So what do I mean by Kamae or tactical funnels, right? What I mean is they shape where the opponent believes opportunity exists. Okay. Well, how's that different from a stance? Well, we have to understand, we have to be able to read their fight style, right? So there's no point in doing something, and like nobody has any business doing Ichimonji or Seigan or any of these profiled positions with that leg out there. If somebody's moving around looking like a kicker and looking like, right, if we've done our research, looking like somebody who would see that as something that's easily swept. So if we can't move that leg quickly and easily without moving our torso first, without doing something so we can pick up the leg, we'll always lose it, right? So there's a whole bunch of prerequisites that go in place before we do these things, right? It'd be best if I position myself in a kamae where that's not a weakness, right? When I'm able to use that kamae correctly, it's no longer a weakness, it's bait. So when he takes the bait, he leaves himself open, okay? Same thing with the lead hand that's floating out there in space, all that stuff, okay? So again, they shape where the opponent believes opportunity exists, believes, okay? And that illusion determines how the attack, how the fight unfolds, how it proceeds from that point, okay? So what I'm getting at here is we're not defending against every possible attack. Can't do it, right? You're deciding which attacks are allowed to exist. This is Okuden level training, okay? I know I'm using the word advanced, but oku in Okuden, den means transmission. Oku doesn't mean, if you've been around for a while, you're probably sick of hearing me say this, but this is for the new folks that have to get caught up, right? Oku in Okuden does not mean secret, doesn't mean advanced, doesn't mean high level. Oku means deep. It means depth. It means understanding things that are not easily seen. Okay? So what we're doing is actually eliminating attack possibilities. And even if he throws them, if he throws a hook, it's still going to get to the same point in space that a straight punch would come, or really, really close, right? Within within a manageable space. Okay. This is not just executing or correctly doing choreography, right? Kata step by step. Okay. So this is the difference between reacting to whatever comes and controlling conditions that allow only for certain things. Okay. So let's take a look at something here, right? Okay. So I've got this, like, that's a nose, right? So regardless of kamae, that's the head. That's all I'm aiming for at the moment. And then I just made a little skull and crossbones for the bad guy, like my little creative approach, right? But let's say we have 3 possible incoming attack angles, but there could be more, right? Because I did it from the top down, right? So it's really difficult to see like an uppercut and back fist and things like that, right? But what if, right? We've got this one coming straight in. So it's just a straight punch to the face, right? It could be a straight grab as well, right? But typically, could be straight in, right? Could be off angle a little bit, right? Or it could be somebody grabbing, off or to the side or trying to go past my head to grab the neck, pull me into the next thing, right? Or it could be a big old hook, right? Leg, fist, whatever, okay? So we've got these three different entry lines, right? So if my posture or my positioning relative to them, right, exposes multiple targets, right, where he can hit the side of my head, he can come straight in, he can come up with kind of a diagonal shot under my jaw from the side or whatever. If all those things are possible, right, then we have to manage multiple reactions. 3 attacks, 3 responses. Does that mean the angling is going to be different, right? The uke nagash, block, whatever, right? That's going to be different. I know when we're doing soft training, when we're doing slow training, seems like no big deal, right? But the reality is, right, back in the realm of science, back in the realm of biology, right, that's not just 3 attacks. Okay, now multiply that by all the different ways it could happen, right? Okay, that's additional cognitive load, right? The brain has to do more in that moment, right? That's delayed decision making. That's panic under pressure. Okay, so here's the big deal. Amateurs fight attacks, right? It's like chasing flies, right? It's one of the things I used to teach way back in the early 80s, right? Stop chasing things. Okay, wait for it to come to you. But sensei, if I wait for it to come to me, I'm going to get hit. Well, then you're in the wrong place. Okay, you're too close, right? Or your angling's off, or you're in the wrong kamae. Okay? But amateurs fight attacks. They worry about what's going to come because they don't understand some of what I'm going to be covering today. So what ends up happening is, because they don't know how to control conditions, they're worried about him being able to do anything. Therein lies the problem, right? They chase movement, right? They try to react to everything, right? And that's why they get overwhelmed, right? So somebody throws some tricky shots, they throw a couple of like combinations, start doing that bobbing and weaving and stuff, and right, just it's like a cat looking, following a fly, hoping you can catch it, right? Let's contrast this with the professional mindset. We could have said beginner and masters or whatever, but if I use the word beginner, right? When the Japanese teachers use the word beginner, they mean somebody who is still not solid on fundamentals. I'm not going to say basics because people equate basics with beginners, right? And they think they're beyond that, okay? But if we think about things a certain way, the way beginners would think, it doesn't matter what color this is, what rank is behind it, or whatever. Japanese teachers still call that a beginner's mind, okay? And I want to use master because, again, this is not rank dependent, okay? It's not rank dependent, right? So amateurs chase things. Professional mindset, right, does something different, okay? And that's why I have this picture up here. So we got red down here, danger, right? Green up here, same guy up here, right? Create this little funnel thing here, right? So grab another color. Let's do this. Be a little bit more artsy. Okay. This kamae, every kamae does this, so I'm not picking one. This kamae, now, doesn't matter if he throws a straight punch, doesn't matter if he comes in off angle, doesn't matter if he throws a hook. My openings combined with my distance create a situation where everything will converge on one point. Okay. That's why we study the reach of people that are a certain height, right? And it's always going to be different, right? We're managing the bubble between he and I, the kukan, right? The space that exists between the top of my head to the top of his head, just outside one shoulder to the other, outside one shoulder to the other, from that point to the ground. Right? Distance. Okay? The science is not the science of learning how to dance with specific choreographed moves and then do our little victory dance because we got it right. Okay? It's learning how to control conditions. You're going to hear me say that again. All right. So what we have now is, right, this is why the kata koku, right? The first kata on the first scroll, well, the Jōryaku no Maki scroll in the Gyokoryu, right? All kata on that scroll point back to koku. They're all doing the same thing, right? They're accounting for certain variables occurring, him doing something unpredictable, him coming in a different way. The next kata, if we have time, I'll talk about that. There's a critical little point in that where I can't lose my cool because it looks like when I do something, he attacks again. We could do it that way, right? I've seen it done that way, but it's not actually an attack. It's another oh shit moment on his part right? And then our job is to not go, oh shit, and then give him enough time to reset things. Maybe we'll get to that, maybe we won't. Doesn't really matter. But that's why the actual translation of the kata in koku says the enemy comes at your face, right? Attacks your face, comes in, that kind of thing, and you're men, okay? And you, boom, 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 right? Okay. Quickly and suddenly attack the stars in the arm. Doesn't say to hit a certain point or whatever, right? Why? Because you're supposed to know. Okay. Why doesn't it tell me what attack is coming? Because the attack itself doesn't matter. I'm supposed to know where to stand. Playing in space doesn't mean being frivolous, right? Playing in space, the feeling in koku, and this primary thing in the Gyokuryu doesn't mean playing in space. It doesn't mean do whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't mean make up any kind of henka because taijutsu sucks. None of that. It means I am free to move to do what needs to be done to make sure that it doesn't matter what he throws. I will be able to do uke. It doesn't specify how uke is done. It doesn't say uke nagash, doesn't say uke uch, doesn't say step to one side or the other side or back or naname, this or not. Doesn't say any of that stuff. Why? Because you're supposed to know. Well, how do I do that? Teacher gives you some models to work with or some henka that do that thing. Okay? This is the hard part. Everybody wants something they can memorize and they can regurgitate, they can perform so that it looks like they know. And that's the difference. Okay? So now we've got this funnel, right? This kamae along with its positioning, right? 3 attacks collapse into one receiving line. Okay? That sweet spot. Okay? So, and here's the thing, strategic positioning doesn't stop attacks. Okay? It shapes attacks. Okay? The opponent believes he sees an opening. Right? And there's certain favorites, there's certain preferences that he likes to do, right? Big old hooking haymaker knockout kind of thing, because that's his thing. Or it's jab, jab, right cross, or it's a lead kick and then whatever, right? But again, he believes he sees an opening based on his preferences. We can't control the attacker's preferences. He showed up with those, right? I can control what he has access to, but I can't control how he's going to attack. So I have to position myself so it doesn't matter. Okay? I can only control what I can control. Right? So I can't control what he throws, but I can control where that ends up when he gets where he's going. Okay? So again, strategic positioning is not about stopping attacks. This is about shaping attacks. Okay? So the opponent believes he sees something, right? But that opening leads him into your strongest line. He sees it as a weakness because it's an exposed target. He's missing something that can't be seen unless you know it's there, right? These lines, okay? So now, when we do this, the fight becomes simpler, okay? Not easier. I didn't say easier. I said more simple. Right? I don't need as much, right? I can meet any of these with the same or close angle, the same kind of receiving arm, the same kind, right? Because they're all going to hit a certain pocket, right? So I don't need to worry about if it's a hook. I don't need to worry about if it's straight. I don't need to worry about if it's an uppercut, right? Because your body's going to have a flinch response that moves 180 degrees away from that thing. So there's more to deal with than just the cool, calm, collected movement that we do in the dojo when we're doing technique training or kata training. Okay. So again, this is about making things simpler, not easier, just simpler, right? Because the reason it makes it simpler is because randomness disappears. Not on his end, right? He's throwing whatever he wants. It looks random, right? How'd you know that he was going to be there? Okay. How'd you know what he was going to throw? See, those are 2 different questions. I didn't know what he was going to throw, but I knew to get at me, it was going to end up here. Okay, that's different, right? So randomness doesn't disappear on his side. He can try to be as tricky and random as he wants. Okay, but I'm now I'm no longer looking for anything. I don't care what comes. Okay, randomness disappeared from me because I don't care what he throws back here. All of those things get funneled to where the target is. Okay, this is not different skill. This is not more advanced or whatever. This is oku, deeper, because of what I'm looking at and what I'm looking for, as compared to what, right? Like beginners, Shoden level training, right? We're defending against attacks, right? Chuden level, right? We're kind of intercepting and meeting the energy so that we can guide things. Okuden, we're looking at stuff that people don't even know that they should be paying attention to. Okay? So let's keep on going with this, right? So let's take a look at Kamae's funnels, right? Just hone in on this a little bit more, this funnel analogy, okay? Because what we need to do now is tie geometry, right? I know this can look kind of archaic when I write this shit up here, right? Advanced Kamae strategy, controlling fight geometry. Well, I tell my students all the time, right? We do something that has to do with angles or this funneling or whatever. And I go, look, I don't care if you liked or disliked geometry when you were in school. I don't care. I don't care what your grade was. Now, it'll save your life. Okay? So let's tie this into the geometry, or this geometry into the Kamae. Okay? Because each Kamae does three things. Okay? Does them in different ways. But again, we're at this high level principle concept kind of thing, right? So each Kamae exposes something. Okay? Exposes something. It protects something. Okay? And what else? It invites something. All Kamae invite certain types of attacks. Okay? This is important, right? But that invitation is intentional. It's not we take up one because this is how we were taught to stand, and then this guy gets close enough to start pounding on the bones of the hand with his knuckles because we were taught this with gloves on, and nobody would ever punch you in the arm because it doesn't hurt. But the ulna getting punched with knuckles or the bones of the back of the hand or the bones of the fingers absolutely fucking hurts and makes you do things that breaks your Kamae and opens things up. Okay, that's why we have them in our mod 3, halfway to black belt. Okay, so if I'm up against somebody that's doing this kind of thing, every time that this is the leading edge of his body, not this. Everybody wants to get to this, but they got to get through this. Well, shit. Just like military operations. If I blow up the bridge or I blow up the gate, the doors to the gate, well, then that's not a problem anymore. Okay, or I get him to move them so they don't get damaged. Not a problem anymore. Okay, again, it's a different way of thinking. Okay, so good Kamae do three things. Okay, they manage distance, okay, MA-AI, right? They shape attack direction. Okay, if I take up Seigan no Kamae, right? If this guy's moving like he's a grabber or he looks a little bit more cross-trained and whatnot, right? And I put this thing out there, I know that one of three possibilities exist, right? He's either going to attack this arm to either attack it, generally not. They're going to either try to knock it aside to create an opening, or they're going to grab it to move it, right? Or grab it to hold on to it, right? That kind of thing, right? Or they're going to go after this lead leg with a sweep, but only if he's more grounded, probably not, because people have to come up to get that sweep in there, right? Or he has to go around it. Okay, so here's the problem. Here's the bubble, right? So where was I? So it shapes attack direction. Okay, And that's very different, right? This invites circular attacks. This invites, come on in, doors open. Okay, very different. Okay, so, and the third thing it does is it collapses variables into a single receiving line. Okay, so this is why classical kamae appear open. This is why the fighter mindsets online keep dropping these damn comments that would never work in a real fight, right? This is how fights actually happen because they're focused on staying in a certain range and trying to bob and weave to not get hit so they can land a shot instead of controlling conditions so that this guy has to sacrifice something, right? How do I get him? How do I make him do certain things? Okay. We can't do this first. There's no point in asking the question, right? How do I get him to throw a certain type of attack? Or how do I get him to come from one side? Or how do I, right? There's that cart before the horse kind of thing, right? Kamae are not defensive walls. Right? That's where that question comes from, right? They look open. Okay? They're not defensive walls. They are controlled invitations. Okay. So again, we'll talk about this Gyokoryu insight. This just a little part of this kata koku, right? The enemy comes at your men, right? At your face. Okay. Doesn't describe the attack, right? Because the attack doesn't matter. Right? If you're positioned correctly, right, all attacks arrive through the same gate. That's why you only need one guard on that gate. Right? This is the Gyokoryu principle of 3 and 1, 1 and 3, right? Multiple possibilities collapsing into one manageable line. Okay? It's not about 3. It's about a multitude of things coming into one thing. Okay? And from that one thing, see, all of his things, all possibilities from him collapse into one. But because I've done that, 1 and 3, because I only have to manage 1 point in space, now I have 3 or more possibilities to go in different directions. Okay. So, we're gonna do this more on Friday for the master's class. There's the link as usual, right? But I'll try to explain what students should feel in training, what you should feel in training. I'm not telling you what to do. If this is just an interesting class that you're using to avoid work, avoid honey, whatever, okay, right? But the serious student who's actually trying to figure this stuff out, who's actually trying to get this, right? There's something that they should feel in training, okay? With regards to their kamae. Good kamae should reduce surprise. It should reduce cognitive load, right? Shouldn't have to think as much, right? And it should increase timing clarity. You should know exactly when to move, right? When positioned correctly, you don't need to guess, okay? You simply receive and exploit the line created by the funnel. But Sensei, what if there's more than one attacker? Well, I'm not drawing a whole bunch of extra skull and crossbones, okay? But the more attackers we have, that's why we have kamae like that. Hira is one of our multiple attacker kamae because Hira creates the foul lines on the baseball field, cricket field, whatever, right? And my positioning and movement and distance keeps all attackers, this is actually out here a little bit more, inside that funnel. They're not allowed to get beside me or behind me. This is no longer about taking up poses, right? This is about controlling space. Okay? So we don't guess, okay? Now, not everything's perfect, right? Okay. Koku, as this kata, right, is teaching, right? Whatever he throws, I can handle. Okay? As a matter of fact, the feeling in Jumonji no Kamae is it's about that thing, right? The feeling in Ichimonji no Kamae, right? No matter what you throw, I can win with my Kamae alone. Okay. In Jumonji no Kamae, because I have 4 equilateral triangles, it's equally difficult to get at me from any angle. I can block or punch with either one without telling, without those kind of things. It doesn't matter what you throw. Right? Whatever you throw is okay with me. Okay. So in Koku, there's this ideal, right? He throws something, I catch it, right? Knock him farther off balance, right? In an oh shit moment, he tries to throw a kick. Again, the kata does not specify the kick. It does not specify. For years, I thought it specified the front kick. But what that allowed me to do was understand how the arm gets struck that would make him throw a front kick, or that would cause him to throw a front kick. But he could throw a rear kick, he could whatever. Okay. The point is that the position I'm in on the shito, oh shit, look at that, right? Should allow me to move easily to a position to parry that leg. Okay. So it creates the beginning of a collapse, and he knows he's going to get nailed, right? So very quickly, boom, that kick comes out. It's maybe partial attack, but partially shit, I got to do something. Okay. And then what do? Right? We shift, tag that leg a little bit, and we create this unbalance. And Koku is teaching that when you catch this, the body seizes up for a quick second to catch itself in reset mode. And then we can take advantage of the fact that he can't escape, he can't counter, he can't block, he can't, right? He's right there, okay? But the next kata on the list, Renyo, Heavenly Palanquin, right? There's this thing that happens, right? We're well on our way to victory, and this thing gets kicked, and he reaches out to grab, okay? Most people treat that as an attack. It's not that you can't, but when I catch that leg right, it's not an attack. You're the only stable thing in his damn world. He's going to fall. And if he falls, he's done, right? So there's this impulse, right? My job is to not be surprised when the unexpected happens, and I keep moving, striking, changing angles, whatnot. So it's not that he stays off balance, it's that his body can't reset in a way that allows for speed, strength, and that kind of stuff to return. Okay? And I carry that all the way to just like people carrying a palanquin, right? That box with royalty gets carried in, big old poles, right? The slaves, right? The minions are carrying this thing, right? Okay. There's that false sense of security that the royalty has, right? Better freaking carry me, minions, right? But the reality is that the minions, at their whim, could walk that damn thing to the edge of a cliff and go, see ya. Right? And that's what's happening, right? He feels like he still has some control going on, whatnot. Whew, save myself, except no, bang, right? All this shit keeps happening. So there's more to it. Of course, we have to learn the step by step so we can get to these layers. We can get to these levels, right? But it's about deeper. It's not about packing more shit on the camel. Okay. So again, with Renyo, right? Attackers, there's this recognition that attackers rarely collapse like immediately, right? They panic, they grab, they try to reset. So if your structure remains aligned with the funnel, with this funnel principle, right? You simply transition, okay? You don't chase, you maintain geometry, okay? This keeps chaos manageable. That's what I've always told students along the way, right? Most of what we do, starting with Kamae, right, is teaching us how to make sense out of chaos, how to manage chaos, right? There's a quote that I sent out as part of one of the email notifications for this particular class from Hatsumi Sensei, right? He's often said, I'm not teaching you, I mean, you're not defending against one person, right? You're defending against the unknown. But if all we're studying is choreography, or we're studying in a sanitized kind of situation and whatnot, and we don't understand that this is what's waiting for us, or this is the reality of things, right? Then it's just choreography, right? And that's going to go away, all right? So we're managing the reset, okay? keeping chaos manageable. Right? So let's bring this back to principle. This training is not about memorizing responses. Okay. I know we do that in the beginning. My students coming up through the Q levels, through the modules and whatnot, right? Yeah. Okay. Because you want to be a master. So here are examples of how a master would do it. Okay. You learn the model so you can learn the lessons. The model is not the lesson. Right? In the black belt levels, there's kata that we've attached to different dan levels, but knowing the kata alone, and this is in their instruction packet, right? Knowing the kata alone is not enough. They have to be able to demonstrate with kata or without the principles. The kata at the upper levels are more like litmus tests. The better you are with them, not choreographically, right? Not step-by-step moves, but you're actually producing the results that each move is supposed to produce, right? That tells us that you understand how to control things, not just how to do things. Okay? So, where am I here? So training is not about memorizing responses, right? It's about eliminating randomness, right? That's what mature warriors do, right? Amateurs fight attacks. Professionals shape the field. Right? So if you caught Kuden this week, he's doing the same thing, but from a life mastery perspective, because the principles, the concepts are principles and concepts. They're not physical techniques. Okay? I can keep everyone ever so slightly off balance in my life. I can become the kind of person. It's not like trying to micromanage people. Become the kind of person that is just hard to pin down as to what their routines are, what their habits are, what they're thinking, that kind of stuff, right? Because again, habits produce predictability. Predictability is that's vulnerability, right? But habits make you predictable. If you're predictable, that creates certainty on his part. And the more certain he becomes, the more he's willing to commit to that line. So there's that little extra that's in here as well. Okay. So again, your goal is not to control the opponent. Your goal is to control the conditions of the encounter that allow for certain things, but not others. Okay. So if your Kamae allows the opponent to choose the fight, to choose the attack, then you're reacting. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to be chasing flies. Okay. If your Kamae determines the line of entry, right, then you're controlling geometry. You're controlling the outcomes. You're controlling. It's going to end up there, right? You're going to be more willing to let him come. Okay. It's more like an open trap than it is frantically trying to duck and bob and whatever. Okay. So everything else, once we get that, everything else becomes easier. Okay. So let's round this out with 3 strategical points that I just covered during this little session together. Okay. So the first thing is don't defend against everything. Right? Don't defend against everything. Okay. Decide where the fight happens. Right? Decide okay. Most fighters think that once we're happening, we're down, right? Oh man, fight's on. Nope. Posturing, maneuvering, control of space, that's what's on. Right? There's nothing's coming yet. And if I'm out of range and he's throwing shit, then he's showboating. If I'm flinching based on and knowing that he can't reach me with that jab, but he throws a jab and that's on me. Right? It's control of distance. All of Hatsumi Sensei's videos from the Quest production company, right? Masaki Hatsumi's martial arts of distance. Distance. Okay? That's why Hatsumi Sensei and all the master teachers, all the current Soke, right? can move around in Shizen and not formal Kamae because they're managing distance. They're presenting the targets. Okay? This is also men. If I'm facing you, the front face of my body that's accessible to somebody, that whole thing is men by extension. It's not literal men face, okay, but it's the side facing them. If I'm not paying attention, I'm wandering around, there's somebody over here I probably should be paying attention to, then this is men. It's going to be harder for me to control it. That's why at fifth dawn, right, there's this recognition that we don't have eyes in the back of our head. Or do we? Right? So the ability to detect unseen danger because we've honed the tactile sense to where it extends out, right? So either way, first big thing here, right? Don't try to defend against everything. Decide where the fight happens. If you're not deciding, somebody else is deciding for you. This is not just a martial arts lesson. This is a life lesson. Okay? If we're not controlling the right things and we feel like that it's always something, shit, every day, got that taken care of, now fucking this pops up. It's not in the moment, right? We're not managing the distance between, right? If we have the belief or we use this regularly, right? Worry about that when it happens, right? We'll cross that bridge when we get there. We might not have the fucking tools or the skills or the energy to cross that goddamn bridge. Okay? Let's just not make sure that we're not using these terms out of a laziness perspective, right? While looking for the secrets so we don't have to work as much. Nope. Learning this stuff and getting it, it's a lot of work. Once you got it, now you look like you're spending less energy or effort or whatever because people can't see that you're looking for certain things. You're gauging distance, you're those kind of things, right? You're gauging openings, you're assessing his fight style and the probability of what he's going to come with, right? It's not the other way around. Okay. So in case anybody was looking for the easy, right? Because they want to do it like Soke. Great. Don't forget that Soke spent decades becoming Soke. And anybody that's watched the Takamatsu memorial video that Hatsumi Sensei created in honor of Takamatsu Sensei, right? Look at some of that video 8 foot or that Super 8 footage or that 8mm footage and stuff from the movie cameras and stuff that he shot and whatnot of him doing stuff. Right? Often people watch that stuff from an idol worship kind of thing. Oh, it's Sensei. Oh, look at how he's doing things. Oh, maybe I should try that. No, there's a huge disconnect between the Soke most people are trying to emulate and where he started from. Anybody looks at that and doesn't think, man, ooh, wow, Soke, shit, right? And seeing how far he came to get to what everybody's emulating or everybody's trying to idolize, right? He went through a shit ton of realignment because he had been in all those fight styles, right? So anyway, all right, so phrase 1. Phrase 2, amateurs fight attacks. Okay. Amateurs fight attacks. Professionals do what? Professionals shape the field. They control the conditions. They make certain things possible, other things not. They're not hell-bent on landing their shots, ignoring the fact that they are absolutely vulnerable. And this isn't a sport competition where a ref's going to step in, break it up, or win or lose. You get to talk smack tomorrow and ask for a rematch. And it's not the way it works. Okay? This should reframe mindset. And the last thing is control the gate. Okay? If you control the gate, control the gate. Right? The gate's not out here. The gate's in here. That's where the fight starts. Because I didn't come in contact with him yet. Okay? There's no fight. there's some lunatic throwing things out into space. Until it's going to land, until it enters that sweet spot that requires action on my part, there's no fight. Okay? So I control the gate. If I control the gate, I control the outcome. Okay? One of the very first lessons many of us learned way back in the day was the ninja takes control from the attacker long before the attacker ever realizes that he lost it. The attacker lost control way over here before these things ever came. Right? We stop stressing when we start controlling what can be controlled. When we understand the science, right? We are learning lessons passed down from warriors who were in a lineage that studied nothing but warfare for 2,000 years. I'm certainly going to take their word for things much more than somebody who's been doing it for 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. Not that that person doesn't have experience, not that there might be something in there that I can learn from, but before I cave to somebody who's going to try to tell me that this won't work on the street in modern 21st century America, England, Australia, wherever, right? Yeah. And on top of that, I've already used it over and over and over again, right? Ex-federal cop, right? Whatever you think of cops, I don't care, right? I've always worn a bullseye on. So anyway, all right. But that's where we are, okay? So the rest is up to you. I mean, obviously, you can take this and use it for what you want or not. Your choice, okay? But what we're talking about is an advanced Kamae strategy. Far away from Kamae as stances, as poses, as shapes, or whatever, right? As part of a control mechanism that gets him to think that certain things are open, certain things are possible, certain things are like, that's a good choice, right? But by using distance, I create a situation where no matter what he throws, that's why a lot of the kata descriptions are really vague, right? Because it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter because I made it not matter. He's trying to hit me. He's not throwing a hook to go past my head or punch into the space on either side or whatever. That's just like in hira. A lot of people stand in hira with their feet under them and shizen with their hands out to the side. That's not hira. Hira moves the feet to shoulder width or farther to eliminate the need to take a step before I can move the body at least half a body width. Right? I've already cheated the system. I put my feet here because he's not going to punch here or here or here. He's going to punch here. I funneled everything to here and put my feet in the safe space. So now I only need to move half my body distance. Okay? But if I have to take a step, I'm getting hit. At full speed, I'm getting hit. Okay? And you can see it in the dojo. You see it in Japan, right? People get tagged, whatever, and first thing they want to do is they want to look at their partner and go, soft training, man, soft training. You're not supposed to be hitting. You're not supposed to hurt your partner. No. The lesson was you're not supposed to try to hurt your partner. You're not supposed to force the technique because a properly executed technique not only works, but hurts all by itself. So soft training is enough. But soft training turned into wussified training is now not realistic. It removes the conditions that will be present regardless. To conform myself so my partner doesn't feel pain during a lock or a throw or whatever, even at slow speeds, means I have to distort my body out of correct position to go around him. I'm supposed to be in correct position that distorts his body. He's not supposed to like it. That's why he's uke. He receives the technique. He learns what the bad guy is supposed to be feeling. But if he won't let the feeling happen, then he won't learn nothing. Sorry, just being a dick. Anyway, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully I'll see you again for the Friday class where we're going to be doing a couple of kata, and then we're going to be doing some randori training so that students can apply the principles and concepts without choreographed structure. to reinforce that they're getting it. Right. And then we'll see where that goes from there. Okay. But 75 to 90-minute class, right? Go to that that URL right there. Okay. Get yourself signed up. Only got 20 spots right now. Somewhere between 4 and 6 are gone. Right. They're already spoken for. Okay. People jump on these things even before I do it. So anyway, hopefully I'll see you. And if not, I'll see you next week on the next episode of Where's Whiteboard Wednesday.